Hi, this is Mike. Welcome back to the Moodle Programming series. The goal of this series is to develop a custom Moodle block. In this session, we will discuss creating a database table for a block in the Moodle database. And we'll be using the tool, the XMLDB editor, to do so. I'd like to show you a couple resources before we get started. Any kind of search on the site for XMLDB will provide you with ample information on how to use the XMLDB editor. That's really the first thing. And then also under the core APIs, there is a upgrade API, and we'll actually use this as a little bit of a reference. There are two files that we want to concern ourselves with. They're both under your block's DB directory. One is the install.xml file, and this is used when someone installs your plugin for the first time. The upgrade.php file, this is used when someone who had an older version of your plugin installed upgrades to the latest version. So these are the two files that we can generate through, well, actually the install.xml is actually generated by the editor. We actually create the upgrade, and then we use some code snippets that are generated by the XMLDB editor. So that's where we'll go from here. What I've done is I've created a basic block, and I've called it database, and I've included the four basic files: access with the two required capabilities, our language file in English with the one required string of plugin name. And I've mentioned this before, this is actually required because this name will be listed on the manage blocks page. So that's why that string is required. We have our block underscore database class that extends the block base, where block base gives us all of our block functionality. And then we have our version.php, which manages our version, as well as what minimum version is required. One thing on the format, the blocks tutorials stated that the last two digits in this number are hours, but in fact it's not hours. It's actually, this increments in terms of versions from 00 to 99. So there's 100 increments. And then the date itself is simply the release date of your block. Well, FYI on that. Now, the next thing we need to do is let's install the block on Moodle, the database block. Okay, it sees the block, and it's new, it needs to be installed. So we'll go ahead and install it. And let's go to the Manage Blocks page. And I have that bookmarked. If you don't, it's Site Administration, Plugins, Blocks, Manage Blocks. And here you'll see that we have our block has been installed. Now, let's go to the XMLDB editor And I have a bookmark for it too, but it's under Administration, Development, then XMLDB Editor. Now let's do the same thing here. Let's look for our block. And there it is here. Blocks, database, DB. What we want to do is we want to create an XML file. In order to do that, our Apache needs to have write access to the DB directory. And this is something that, well, let's go ahead and log in to our Moodle instance using SSH. And I have a alias of moo that takes us to Moodle's document root. Then let's cd to blocks. And let's cd to database. Now, we can see that the world does not have write access. So let's go ahead and change that. So let's chmod -r, which will be recursive, and then the permissions that we want to give it. Let's give write access and the DB directory. So there we go. We have the world has write access to that directory. Now when we're all finished, you want to change this back to like 764. You don't want the world to be able to write to that folder, that directory. Okay, so let's go back to Moodle and let's refresh this page, and now we should be able to create the file, the XML file. So there we go. We have now create is enabled. Click on create. Not sure what happened there. Let's try that again. I think what it needs execute. Rewrite execute. So let's go back and let's just make this 777. Now for sure you want to change that when we get done here. So let's go back to our XMLDB editor and let's look for our database block. Okay, we've got the create again. So let's see. That's what it was. Now we need to load. This will give us the ability to edit. And here we go. We can go ahead and start adding fields to our database table. And let's go ahead and, there's some functionality here. View original, new table from MySQL, that's probably an import function. View SQL code, view PHP code, which we'll use that when we actually do the upgrade. But for now, let's just go ahead and access this table, the block_database table. And let's go ahead and add a couple new fields. Right now it just has an ID, auto increment ID. So let's call this title. We won't add a comment. This will be a character. And let's make it 255 characters long. We'll allow nulls, not a sequence, and no default values. Then we'll just click on change to add this field to the table. Click on Save. And let's add one more. I clicked on the wrong one. Add one more field. And let's call this one Created. No comment. This will be a character field as well. Length, let's make this one 25. No decimal. Allow nulls. No sequence, no default value. Change. Click on Change, and then we added that to the table. Click on Save. Let's go back to the front page of the editor. And then let's look for our... Okay, we'll take a look at the XML file from this level. So here we have the XML. There's a node, tables node, that has nested table nodes that have fields, and the fields that we've created. The title, type char with length 255. The field created, which is also type char and length 25. And then here's our primary key. So that looks good. So let's unload this, and all that does is it just turns off the editing ability through this XMLDB editor. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cheat a little bit. Since according to the documentation, this file is only executed or processed when a person first installs your block. Well, since we really don't know how to create an XML file yet, then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and uninstall the block and then simply reinstall it, and it will pick up the database. So let's uninstall it. Continue. And at this point, let's just look in the database and see if we have a block _ database table. And we don't. There's a community and instances, but no block _ database table. Now let's go back to Moodle, click on Continue, and this time when it installs, it'll actually pick, since the install.xml file is there, which we can verify. We don't see it here because we haven't downloaded it, but let's go ahead and just peek on the server and download the XML file. So there is the XML file that was written to the server. And there's the same XML file that we saw through the DB editor, the XMLDB editor. So if we continue to upgrade the Moodle database now, it'll read that file and install the database, or rather install the table, the database table. Okay, so let's check. And let's refresh the list of tables. And let's check for and there's our block _ database table. And there's the fields that we added. ID was the default, auto increment ID, an integer, and then we have title and created that are both character fields. So that's good. That's part one. Now if we wanted to upgrade the database, let's go back to the XMLDB editor, and back to our block. And let's load it again so that we can edit. Puts it right at the top of the page, a little hard to see there. Let's edit this. Now let's go into the block underscore database table. And now let's add a new field. So this one we'll just name, let's call it flag. It'll be an int of length 1. So they're going to be 0 or 1. No decimals. There won't be a null because we'll just say not null. And we'll have a default of 0. No sequence. So we've added that field. So now all we need to do is save it. And let's go back to the, well, before we do that, now I mentioned that we would use this view PHP code link, and we will. So we have a choice here of selecting the type of action that we want. There's a variety of choices. The one that we want is we want to add a field, and we want to add a field, and we want to find the flag. We want a code snippet to add a field of type flag, or the field flag, named flag. Now we'll need to go back to our documentation, and there's an example of the code, the function that gets called on an upgrade, and this is placed in the upgrade.php file. So we'll create an upgrade.php file in our DB directory, and then we'll add that code snippet into the file. We'll need to modify the function name and rename it to block underscore database. And now we go back to Moodle, and we'll need to grab this code snippet that the XMLDB editor has generated for us. Back to NetBeans. And then there's a line in here that says code. There's a commented line here. It says code to add the column generated by the view PHP option of the XML editor. So we'll just copy that out, or copy the snippet over that. And now we'll need to adjust where it says, oh, our current version is, we'll need to adjust the version. The version now is 2014 081400. So we'll increment this to 01. And we'll take this number and copy it. And wherever we have this XXXXX, we'll go ahead and copy in our new version. So what's actually done in this file is there's a global variable called DB. We'll discuss global variables in possibly our next session. And it just allows you, it provides an API to where you can manage access to the database, under a variety of different scenarios. So in this case, we create a instance of XMLDB underscore table, and then we create a field of XML underscore table or underscore field with our newly added field to the database table. And then down here, it's a conditional statement that if these fields, if the table and field does not exist, if the field does not exist in this specific table, then go ahead and add it. Then we upgrade the save point, upgrade the version. So now what happens is if a person does not have our block installed at this point, then they would, then the install.xml file would be executed or processed, and we'll go ahead and unload this so we can't edit it anymore. But we'll take a look at the XML file. So now you can see that flag, so if someone doesn't have our block, the latest version of our block, then this flag field is going to be included on the initial install. But in our case, since we don't have the upgraded, when we installed the block, we didn't have the field flag included. Now that's where the upgrade.php comes into play. So now let's go ahead and upgrade the version. We'll make it 01. And that should, when we go back to Moodle, let's go to the home page. And it sees the change to be upgraded. Success. Now let's check our database and let's see if we have the additional field. And there it is. There's our flag field. It was just added. And it works as expected. The process is really straightforward and clean. That's really all I have for this session. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. Bye.